My name is Javier Luraski. I'm a software engineer. I work at HAL9, and I'm super excited to talk to you about artificial intelligence with JavaScript. So just just to give you like a quick overview, like why artificial intelligence, why JavaScript, like this is honestly kind of like a new topic that not everyone is familiar with. So why would you care about doing artificial intelligence with JavaScript? And what I want to advertise here is there is a Twitter hashtag called made with TFJS, made with Tensorflow Js. And it's totally worth taking a look at this, at what the community is building. And here are just some examples that I want to show you. So for instance, in this case, Charlie Gerard built an application with JavaScript and artificial intelligence that basically allows a browser to look at your position, right, of your head and do head tracking. And, kind of like do this 3D visualization, kind of like imitating what you would see as an AR application. So that's one example, right? All running in JavaScript, all running in the browser. Here's another one of that Charlie Gerard built where she's playing a game, again, just with kind of like doing motion tracking, all in the browser, and you can just kind of like play a game, right? Okay, that's pretty awesome. Another one where you can animate an avatar all with JavaScript and using technologies like Tree.js, and again running on the browser, which is it's pretty cool. I think this one is from Rick. There's another example here where someone is doing kind of like Minority Report type of like drag and dropping just with your hand and hand tracking, and again all of these running in JavaScript in the browser. Let me show you another one here, which I think is pretty powerful. Someone built, American Sign Language translator, actually the team at Google. And again, it does, hand tracking, and it allows you to, communicate and, translate those signs for people that, that need this particular functionality, right? So, like really the types of applications that you can build if you mix artificial intelligence with JavaScript are pretty amazing. And I think it's just starting. And similar to that, what my team and I focus is on applying artificial intelligence with JavaScript with simpler data sets, right? So you can also use artificial intelligence with JavaScript to say, if you have like an Excel spreadsheet that is tracking Tesla's price, and you wanted to do like some modeling and figuring out like how Tesla price is going to change over the next year or two, you can also use the same concepts in this case to do, say, a linear regression, and like predict values into the future, or you can change them and change the different type of model and use an exponential model or whatever. So there's this huge range of applications that you can do, from very crazy things like creating video games that you can manipulate with your with your body using your web camera, to simpler applications where you can do like data analysis, like time series prediction, image classification directly in the browser. So hopefully this gets you interested, and my hope is that by the end of this talk, you're like excited about doing artificial intelligence with JavaScript and want to do this on your own. All right, so just a little bit about us. This is our team. We're mostly a team of software engineers and data scientists building a platform to let you more easily do JavaScript with artificial intelligence. And kind of like just to get started is like we definitely the first concern that people have is, okay, like why would we do it on JavaScript? Why not Python, right? How is Python different than other programming languages for doing AI, etc., right? And we know that Python, if you've heard a little bit about artificial intelligence, you'll know that Python is currently the most popular, like most used programming language for artificial intelligence. But if you look at what Python is, and this is a definition from the creator of Python, Guido van Rossum, there's nothing about Python that makes it, particularly great or bad for artificial intelligence. It just, the way that Python was created is a generic scripting language, that, it's high-level programming language. And, like it happened to be the case that the artificial intelligence community adopted, to do a lot of the workflows. But, it's not that it was designed for doing artificial intelligence. And yet still is the most popular programming language for artificial intelligence. If you look at other programming languages like the R programming language, this particular programming language was defined for doing data science, right? And it's based on doing it's optimized for doing statistical computing. And if you look at this and compare it with Python on artificial intelligence, Python still has the lead. even against a language that was kind of like defined and created for doing the data science and artificial intelligence. There's other programming languages like Julia, which, like it really focuses on speed, and people at DeepMind are using it, in some of their models to kind of like generate this type of more performant modeling. And again, like it's not the most popular programming language for artificial intelligence. That's still Python, right? So this asks the question is like, okay, like, so why would I do it with JavaScript, right? And honestly, I mean, I don't think I need to sell you on this, because JavaScript, we're all in this together on this conference, so we're obviously interested in JavaScript. But like JavaScript is truly like a programming language that is, like has a community on its own. There's no single company behind it. It has really evolved to be like a cross-company, cross-industry effort that that is great. And the only definition that I've really found about JavaScript, it's kind of like in one of the early books on JavaScript, like it was defined as a glue language for web, for the web, right? For web technologies and web deployment and whatnot. Anyways, so JavaScript, I mean, we know that is great. And honestly, one of the reasons that JavaScript is great, apart from I personally love it, but also is how well adopted it is, right? So JavaScript is the most popular programming language in the world, and according at least to the Stack Overflow survey, followed by HTML and CSS, which again, like, it's almost synonym of JavaScript. We use them together many times, and then followed by SQL, Python, and Java. So obviously, it's a great programming language. Now, like any programming language, like it has its blind spots. I'm not going to play this video, but if you haven't seen it, just go to my slides and just click this slide. Like obviously there's a few unexpected things that happen in JavaScript, but like I've worked with other programming languages like Python, R, and like C#, C++. No programming language is perfect, right? So really the question here is like, okay, there's nothing, preventing us really from using JavaScript with artificial intelligence, but like, why, why would we do it? I know that, I think hopefully I made the point that we can build cool stuff, but like, why would the artificial intelligence community, like really embrace JavaScript, right? And I think the problem that artificial intelligence has today is that AI is very hard to deploy. Like, most data scientists work with Python, R, and Julia, and they're very happy creating their models, like creating their visualizations. Like that works today pretty well. But the problem is like once a data scientist actually creates an application, like a lot of times that that visualization, that, like model needs to be deployed to production, right? Like it needs to become like a mobile application, a web application. It needs to run, say, on a, like on a specific hardware, right? And that's actually very hard today to do. Like, and there's a lot of companies trying to solve this problem. Like the industry on the AI side has called these MLOps, or machine learning operations. And it's basically the process of taking something that was written in Python, R, or Julia, converting it into something that can run, say, on a web browser, on the server, on mobile. And it's not a problem that is solved. Like, like you all know that, if you want to convert a JavaScript application that runs in the web to a mobile device, you can just run React Native, right? And it just works like pretty easily. Like that problem is not solved in the AI space. Like there is no way of deploying really, like a Python model into a mobile browser. It's super hard. It's super tricky. So that's a problem that we face, right? And obviously the solution, or one of the solutions, could be, what would happen if we use JavaScript, right? And I'll go through this pretty fast, because we know that JavaScript and web technologies are great to deploy in multiple devices, right? Like if you want to deploy to a web browser, it's like, well, like really that's your only option. If you're gonna, I mean, there's other options, but like the best option is to write JavaScript code, HTML, and CSS. And then you can basically use a browser, right? And, like it's very easy to deploy AI models if we were to write them in JavaScript. And we get the, like all the extensions, that, our previous presenters mentioned, like, all the dev tools that are built into the browser. And then, if we want to deploy it to, to actual computers, like, there's many computers just running Chrome OS, right? Which is another variation of Chrome. So again, very easy to deploy JavaScript if you want to, and you can also use something like Electron, right? If you want to deploy to a desktop application. If you want to deploy to a server, well, we have like a best class, world-class server in the JavaScript world, which is Node.js, to deploy JavaScript applications. And, there's companies like Netflix and others that have used Node.js as microservices serving millions of users. And again, this is something that we take for granted on the JavaScript world. But when you look at artificial intelligence and creating these models and deploying them, it's something that is not well solved in other programming languages. What about visualizations, right? It's like, well, we have WebGL. It's arguably the best place to deploy and create visualizations is, like web technologies, right? And it's super important on artificial intelligence. And, like we have things like WebAssembly, right? Like which the Python community just dreams of, right? It's like you can take code on C++ and, like compile it and, like have it run it locally on the browser and whatnot. And then there's other projects like Johnny 5 that allows you to run JavaScript in, smaller devices like Arduino. So I don't think I need to convince you like, okay, like JavaScript is like a great technology, but like if you combine that with the need of the current AI community, which is like, how do we deploy models? How do we really productionize applications built in, in other programming languages? I think there's something very interesting happening here. All right, but now let's talk about like the other side, right? Artificial intelligence, like what exactly it is, like, if you've been working on web technologies in JavaScript, I don't expect you to know what artificial intelligence is, right? So there's a few definitions here from Wikipedia, but we're honestly going to skip them because they're, I think they're evolving and it's tricky to understand them anyways. And you can see them in my slides if you want the details. But here's my version of like the three concepts that we all need to understand if we want to do some artificial intelligence from JavaScript. So the first one is like, okay, what is data science? And really, it boils down to data science is the process of, getting data, raw data, and transforming it to knowledge. And that raw data can be something as simple as a CSV file, like an Excel data with Tesla stock price, right? I know that's the data. And the knowledge is like creating like a prediction, right? Like how is it changing on the past? How is it going to change on the future? That's knowledge. Or it could be as complex as the data could be all the live feeds from Tesla cars that, are being collected, from multiple cameras. And the knowledge is, given a specific image, do I steer left or right and how much do I accelerate? That's the knowledge, right? So that process of converting data to knowledge, that's data science. And then the other concept worth understanding is machine learning. Machine learning is really, when we're not doing that process manually, when we actually automate it and convert it into an application that runs by itself, that's machine learning, right? So if you hire a data scientist to convert your inbox into what emails are spam and what emails are important, that's data science. But if you actually write code that automatically for all the emails in the world, if you're Google, converts whether an email is a spam or not, that's machine learning. And it uses the same tools of data science. It just automates the process into applications that can be run without having the knowledge of doing data science. And then what is artificial intelligence? Well, it really boils down to really advanced machine learning, right? And, there's a lot of concepts here like neural networks, deep neural networks, transformers, and deep reinforcement learning and whatever. But it really boils down, like it uses the same concepts of data science and machine learnings, but with more advanced models that require more data and, more complex, mathematical models behind them. All right, so those are the three kind of like, things that we need to learn about artificial intelligence when we're starting, right? And here are the great news, like actually converting data to knowledge it's a very simple process. The hard part is on the details, right? But like all the data science projects, and it follows that all the, artificial intelligence projects start with this workflow, right? You start with the raw data. So you need to import the data from somewhere, either a CSV file or like, live feed from Tesla cars, whatever. And then you need to clean the data, right? And that's called transforming the data. So you need to say, okay, like I have a CSV file, but I need my data in a date format, or I need to clean up, I need to resize the images, etc., right? And then after you transform the data, you need to visualize it, right? Because we're not good at, parsing CSV files. Usually what we want to do is we want to, see like how, Tesla stock is moving, right? Like we don't want to see the raw data. So like a lot of times you visualize it. Then after you visualize it, you usually train, which basically means, okay, generalize the data and find a more simple, not necessarily simple, but also more compact model that represents the data. And once you have that model, you can use it to do predictions, right? Like steering a Tesla car left or right. And then usually you want to explain and tell the user is like, hey, this is the path that I'm going to follow, or this is the direction that Tesla stock is going to move in the future. And then last but not least, you usually integrate that, you deploy it, you make it part of like a proper application. And that's what we call exporting it or deploying. And here the great news, I know that this is a lot of tasks. It's a lot of information to, digest in a 30-minute talk, but like, what I want you to understand on this particular talk is that as a JavaScript developer, as a JavaScript engineer, as a front-end engineer, you already know how to do most of these tasks. You already know how to import data, transform data, visualize it, explain it and export it. And I'll prove it to you in the next slides before we actually get to the meat of the talk, which is, like, how do you train and predict? All right, so if you want more details, like just look at my slides and, you can click this link, and I wrote a full blog post on how to do this, but like we're gonna jump through some of the concepts. So visualizations is like, okay, if you know JavaScript, you already know how to do visualizations in many cases. Like I'm sure many of you have used or have heard of tools like D3, which is it's a JavaScript library to do high quality visualizations, or maybe, like maybe tools like Plotly or like Chart.js, or even putting a div with CSS. Like CSS is a visualization library, right? Like it allows HTML and CSS actually allows us to take raw data in JavaScript and convert it to something that we can visualize. So, like we can get into details here, but, you already know how to do data visualization in JavaScript if you know a little bit of JavaScript, which is, I think is great, right? And then, all right, and just talking about those specific libraries, right? Like D3 is literally the best state-of-the-art library for doing data visualizations. The New York Times data science team actually uses D3 to make some of their most complex data visualizations. And, it's just literally just JavaScript with a library called D3, and you can build like super, like the best-in-class visualizations in the world, which is awesome. There's other tools like Observable. We really like at HAL9 a tool called Observable Plot, which basically allows you to do charts, and it's very flexible and it's built on top of D3. But there's literally other 20 charts that, like other 20 libraries that are for charting that you can make use of. So yeah, definitely, definitely there's a lot to pick from. And, when you think about transforming data, it's like, okay, what does transforming mean? It's like, it literally means transforming, like a JavaScript, either dictionary, a JavaScript array into a different type of, data, right? And it's just cleaning up the data and whatnot. And really, there's a lot of tools that you can use. You can just use JavaScript, convert and iterate with a, like a dot map or a for each loop. That's still reasonable to transform data. The D3 library has some functionality to doing transformations, for doing grouping. There's a couple other libraries. But for instance, Tidy.js, it's inspired on an R library called TidyR that, like allows you to do things like summarizing records, filtering, changing columns, changing data types. And, it's things that you might not know them with this name, like, okay, like, transforming data, but that's something that as a JavaScript user, you do every day, right? Like we always get data in some format, and we need to translate it, even if it's from a API call, like we always need to translate it to like a React, say, component or whatnot, right? Like these are just tools specialized for doing data analysis, but you can always write plain JavaScript, and they're built on plain JavaScript. There's another tool called Arcaro, which we also use at HAL9 and we really enjoy. And the big difference, or the thing to know when processing data is that it is, when you store the data in raw format, it's not very efficient for the CPU. So one of the tricks that they do on data science, on the data science community, is they store the data on column format. And, this is like a very simple, like optimization, but it actually gives you like a huge performance improvement. And one of the libraries that allows you to do this is called Arcaro. There's another library called Danfo.js, which we really enjoy as well. And it allows you to do transformations on top of a library called Tensorflow that we'll talk in a second. And in this, Tensorflow is great. I'll talk about it in a second, but it's good to know that there's also libraries built on top of JavaScript and Tensorflow as well. And yeah, so what about importing and exporting data? You already know how to do that. Like if you know how to use fetch from JavaScript, like literally just like a fetch call to get like some JSON file, that's importing data into your, data pipeline, right? Like you do a fetch, you get a JSON file, and then you like you get the JSON, you potentially log the data, or you use D3 to actually, get a CSV file and load it into JavaScript. And, exporting, right? Like once you have like a pipeline that converts data into knowledge, like you can create like a React app, a Vue app, a Svelte app. You can just use plain HTML and jQuery or whatever. You can deploy it to a server. So I don't need to get into details in here because we've had a bunch of great talks on this conference on how do you deploy, how do you build applications, how do you build extensions. I think the important thing to mention here is that these are components of artificial intelligence and data science that you already know how to do. And, okay, so, we spend a lot of time, introducing JavaScript, why JavaScript makes sense for artificial intelligence, how to build artificial intelligence pipelines. Now we're missing to really talk about, okay, how do we actually do artificial intelligence, like the things that we don't know about, right? Which is training, predicting, and maybe explaining, right? Which is visualizations over the predictions and, over the functionality that you found out. So training, so there's a few libraries to use on JavaScript to do training and prediction. The most popular, I would argue, that is called Tensorflow Js. There's another one. The two more popular libraries, period, for doing artificial intelligence in Python are TensorFlow and PyTorch. And there happens to be a port for TensorFlow into the JavaScript world called Tensorflow Js. It actually got started in around 2018, so it's not that old, and the community has been growing. Google has been pushing hard on adoption and features, and the TensorFlow JS community that I mentioned on Twitter. Most of these examples are built with TensorFlow JS, and basically it's advertised as machine learning in JavaScript. I think it's pretty awesome because it basically allows you to do the same things that you would do on Python directly in JavaScript, and meaning that you can run them in the browser, or you can also run them in the server with Node.js. And you can use technologies like GPUs on the server, and on the browser, it actually uses WebGL, which is like a visualization library performant. So you still get to use the GPU on the browser while training or doing predictions with TensorFlow JS. Perhaps not at the same performance as if you had a dedicated, actually not with the same performance, but like with a better performance that you would get on a CPU without having to configure and all these things. So I think TensorFlow JS is definitely great. There's a bunch of examples. I won't click this, but definitely look at my slides. You can click them, and there's different examples that you can see specifically on how to do TensorFlow JS in the browser or in the server with this library. And just to give you some code, right? Okay, because we've talked a lot, like how exactly do I write these applications, right? So here's some code that you can actually copy paste. It's an HTML page, so it's actually pretty straightforward. As you can see, like we're including a library, literally we're just saying script source, and then we're including TensorFlow JS, TF.js, and then we have some code here, right? Now the code does look, can look a little bit intimidating, but I'm going to try to explain it. Now, the good news is that it's just JavaScript code, right? That, the specific things that you need to learn is like the concepts behind the TensorFlow library, but like any JavaScript library, you will be able to learn it, right? So what are we doing here, and how do we write this type of data-driven applications? So really the way it works is as follows. What we're trying to do at the core when we're doing artificial intelligence is we're really just trying to predict numbers. And sometimes it's as simple as saying, hey, I have the number 1, 2, 3, and 4. What's the next number? That's, the next number is 5, and that's called a linear regression, right? And it's just looking at the patterns of previous data and trying to come up with a trend over time. So the first thing that we need to tell a TensorFlow model is like, what equation do we use? Like, do I use, are we trying to find, are we trying to fit a linear regression, which would be, like a linear equation, mx plus b, x plus 1 would solve, obviously, this problem. What type of equation are we looking for? And it could be something as simple as just literally that, like the equation of a line. Or it could be something as complex as, a very complex model that has multiple connections, called multiple layers. And, it's called, the term that we use is a deep neural network to drive a car, right? And really it's just it just boils down to specifying a mathematical equation for the model. And there's a lot of ways of creating it and whatnot. And then the next thing that we ask TensorFlow is, how do we measure the error? I'm going to give you data as input. I'm going to give you data as output. You need to tell me how do I choose what what's a better solution? And that's, in this particular case, we're using something called mean square error. All right, that's cool. Then you need to tell the library, how do I find a solution? Like there's different ways of exploring and finding a solution for a particular problem space. In this particular case, we're saying, hey, the optimizer is SGD, which stands for stochastic gradient descent, which is basically a way of trying to look for the best solution by looking at the biggest potential change of rate in the solution. Anyway, so you actually don't need to know like all the details. Like it's just good to understand like, okay, like what's going on and how do I program these things. And the last step is like, okay, like go and figure out what are the potential solutions to this model and give me some predictions. Now, if you feel like this, like that's completely understandable. Like this is a lot to, to try to understand in a 30-minute talk. It's obviously, it's kind of like a new space, but like I think what is important to mention is that it's all JavaScript and you can learn it, right? And I'm going to give you some resources to really kind of like become more familiar with AI. And the first one is, there's a lot of books out there to learn TensorFlow and to learn machine learning and artificial intelligence with JavaScript, right? So you don't need to learn every, package management, creating applications, visualization, like all those things you already know how to do with JavaScript. You can focus just on how do I learn, like how to, to actually create this type of different, like optimization problems, right? With numerical optimization problems. And for that, I would really recommend the book from Gant Laborde. He's also an advisor at HAL9, and he wrote a book called Learning TensorFlow Js with O'Reilly. And I think it's great. Like it's super fun. You do need to spend a little bit of time, but like anything interesting in life, you usually need to spend some time in order to become proficient at something. And the other thing that you can use is HAL9. So we have our product for building JavaScript with artificial intelligence is completely free to use on the web for that particular use case. And there's a lot of examples that we have here. So for instance, we can take a look at this image classification example, or kind of like create our own from scratch. So let's just try to do that. We'll create our own from scratch. So if you want to do image classification in HAL9, we have different blocks. You can say, okay, let's just add a block and let's add some images. Here we have a cat, a dog, and a llama. And then you can add another block and say, hey, like I want to do image classification, and then I'm going to give you the URL, right? And now we can see here that we're doing some predictions. And the first one is an Egyptian cat, then it's a golden retriever, and then it's a llama. And you can do this with drag and drop, but like the nice thing about HAL9 is that it's built on open source. So you can also open the script, which is just JavaScript code. This just looks like a list of image URLs, and then you can look at the actual TensorFlow JS code and see what do we have here. We have a lot of categories, so this is super boring code. But then at the very end, we actually have the actual code that gets the model, like the pre-trained model that someone else already trained. And you can see the code that actually gets the image and performs the prediction, right? So you can, you're free to copy paste this in your own application and do image classification, right? So that's one way. The other one is, we're putting together a course to learning, machine learning with JavaScript. You can go to hal9.com and then just click on tutorials. And, I'm happy to give like 10, the first 10 people that sign up to this course, like I'll just give it away. We'll give it away for free. So just put your email address, join it, and then we'll give the course away for free for those that want to learn. But I think the thing to mention is that it's not that hard. There's a lot of resources like the books. You can use tools like HAL9 to actually make your life a little bit easier with drag and drop and similar. And there's definitely online resources like the TensorFlow JS made with TensorFlow JS community in Twitter and whatnot. And I really my whole point of this talk is to brainwash you that like artificial intelligence is pretty awesome, and that you should give it a shot at working with that with JavaScript, whichever way you choose to. Books, like YouTube channels, courses, tools like HAL9, whatever. Just give it a shot. Build interesting things. I think you would have a blast using JavaScript and artificial intelligence together. Right. So that's all I have. Definitely, like feel free to reach out to us at hal9.com. Or if you want to shoot me an email, you can find me at javier@hal9.ai or in Twitter at Javier Luraski. And, just happy to connect and answer questions. And then thanks for having me.
Wow.
I know that was a lot, but, hopefully as long as people are inspired and they're like, okay, like that looks interesting, I need to try out, building cool stuff with artificial intelligence and JavaScript, like, just go and explore out there what's available, give it a shot, because I think this is just ready to take off. And, the JavaScript community it's something that you should know about and, give it a shot if you're interested. And yeah, but I know that it was a lot, but hopefully people are interested in this.
It was excellent. It was interesting. Well, it was new for me. Well, the first time I saw your proposal, then I started to explore a bit because I wasn't aware till that moment that it even exists, this ecosystem. And I see books and libraries for doing this stuff in JavaScript. And I'm into Python, and I've never thought about that direction.
And honestly, I really think it's about, like creating awareness. That's what I was excited about joining Extreme.js, because, whenever you say artificial intelligence, sounds like super scary, especially to a web developer or JavaScript user. Is like, oh, I don't think I can do that, right? But like when you actually look at it, it's like, well, I know how to get data, I know how to transform it, I know how to visualize it, I know how to build applications, and there's already libraries that help me do the other part, right? So I really think that, like if you're a JavaScript user and want to play with these, like you're gonna have a lot of fun, and it's also good for your career. It's like kind of like the forefront of technology. So like I'm super excited to see like what the Extreme.js attendees come up with, and definitely super excited to see the community growing in this space.
Well, as I said, wow, I'm amazed of everything you showed us. It's a new ecosystem coming up, and the never-ending evolution of our domain. It's a new ecosystem.
That is so true. Like JavaScript is, in some ways is eating the world. Like, JavaScript started as a web developer technology. And, like today, like really many of the server compute happens in Node.js, and a lot of the mobile development, this happens on JavaScript, right? So to me, like my point of view is like, what is more likely, that Python remains, like the language to do artificial intelligence, or yet again, like JavaScript surprises us. And I wouldn't be surprised that in 3-5 years, artificial intelligence might be written as well in JavaScript, right? And this is not like a popular point of view today. Only time would tell, but like, it has happened over and over again with JavaScript, right? Like people underestimate it, and then just for whatever reason, like maybe it's the community, maybe just the momentum that it has going, it just keeps growing. So yeah.
Absolutely. My background is Java. I'm Java for since it was for more than 25 years. Just imagine, and I can say that even now you can meet Java developers that don't consider JavaScript as a serious option for doing stuff. And when I look at what happens in those huge companies I work with, I see companies moving systems, platform from Java to Node.js, or at least take parts of those server-side sophisticated application and do it in JavaScript. And who knows, things happen. I mean, I still remember JavaScript a long time ago when those Java developers used to say, it's a toy, it's not serious, it's not for something that you can do serious stuff with.
I mean, honestly, in some ways that point of view hasn't changed. I think like still JavaScript is frowned upon today a little bit, but it's really weird because it's the most popular programming languages, and companies like Netflix and Google, support it and use it. For instance, I don't think people know, but it's not super well known, but the Slack application is built on JavaScript and HTML, right? And people use it every day, and it's just JavaScript, right? Like many of the mobile applications are built on JavaScript. Yeah. So I think I think there is this, like a lot of software engineers think like, oh well, JavaScript, I don't know about it, but like the reality is that it just runs everywhere. I don't think it's gonna stop. But like maybe it's good that honestly we get that this skepticism, because JavaScript flies under the radar, right? And it's like, oh, like like JavaScript and artificial intelligence is probably just a toy, and it just flies under the radar until like one day you wake up and it's like, wait, it's actually easier to do JavaScript, AI with JavaScript, and I think that they will come. So I don't know. I'm a big fan. I've always been a fan of JavaScript, and I'm so happy to be back. Like working on JavaScript. I think it's a great programming language, especially the ecosystem. Like if you don't, like if you prefer to do TypeScript, that's completely fine. Compiles to JavaScript. So yeah, like I think the web community in general is amazing, and I'm super looking forward to see like what the Extreme.js community comes up with.
Absolutely, I'm with you. I couldn't phrase it better. I mean, you describe it. Yeah, and I think there are people. Well, there will always be those people that are a bit more difficult to change, and they stick with something and are less flexible. But with time, as years pass by, I can say that we see less and less of those people. Right. So people become more flexible and understand that they need to evolve and learn and explore and look around, because things change, and if they don't learn and evolve, suddenly they won't have a job or something like that. So
yeah, and this is again, I think that's something characteristic from the JavaScript community. Like it's very common for people to jump from being a front-end engineer to a back-end engineer, like to using, becoming a mobile engineer. And I think, like it's like a great community, like if you're looking for, like other projects to explore professional career growth, like, I mean, we can start doing artificial intelligence with JavaScript. And again, I think you're completely right. Like people will have to just keep evolving, right? And the JavaScript community is just great at that. I think if anything, like I think that's the definition of almost JavaScript, is like an evolving programming language, an evolving community, and that's we don't know where the future goes, but like that's probably the best way of finding it, right? Just keep moving, and I think JavaScript is the way. So that's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. Oh, we have questions. So we have. Just a moment. Jesus.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay, my English is not good because I have not been properly trained in speaking. So I'm sorry right now. I'm a junior developer from Colombia. And I'm interested in the subject that you was talking about. But all the techniques that we use for develop our work are a little rudimentary. So I'm interested in artificial intelligence and data science, and all you hear is Python everywhere.
Right.
But I don't have a deep knowledge about Python, but I do have a proper knowledge about JS.
JavaScript, yeah.
So what do you think that is the most valuable advice that you can give to someone like me that doesn't have a lot of experience in programming and want to learn to do some artificial intelligence?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about building HAL9 as a free platform for doing JavaScript, artificial intelligence with JavaScript. Because, honestly, like I'm not trying, to self-advertise here, but like I do feel like a great first step is to play with HAL9.com, right? Like, and the reasoning here is that, if you go to hal9.com, we have a lot of simple data analysis. Like for instance, you can do sentiment analysis, in GameStop, in Wall Street Bets, in Reddit, right? So I would take a look and be like, okay, how are these people building this stuff, right? And it's like, you can look, for instance, something as simple as, if you want to predict vaccine rollout, right? If you want to predict, climate change, is like, okay, like how do you do these things, right? And honestly, it's not that hard. Like you can, as I mentioned, is like you step by importing the data. You can look at the code. So here, for instance, is like, okay, what are we doing? Is like, okay, we're doing a fetch call, and then we're just loading that CSV, right? This is not hard code. I would go and explore HAL9, all the examples. Is like, okay, how are they filtering data? We're doing a scatter plot. It's like, okay, cool. How do I do that? It's like, oh, like here's some charting code so it's really not hard. I think it helps, if you want to get in this space, start with simple things. Start with, I have a CSV file. I want to visualize it, and I want to say, create a regression, right? And, in this particular case, again, like we can change around the parameters, and, you have the TensorFlow code here. So to me, like what I'm passionate about is making artificial intelligence more accessible. And I think a drag and drop tool that anyone can use like helps a lot. I mean, eventually you can leave HAL9 and, like build, like something directly on, VS Code or NPM or Sublime, and just, like not use HAL9, but like the code is not that hard. And the first step is to try to do simple data analysis, right? And we have a lot of examples. So I would recommend that you just play with them and look at what we have there. It's like, simple stuff. If you're into 3D visualizations, you can mix, say 3D JS with visualizations and do some cool things. But the reality is that, if you know JavaScript, if you're a web developer, I definitely think that you already know a lot of the things out there. Also, as I mentioned, like feel free to jump into our course that we're creating. We'll give it away for free for the people that sign in first. And yeah, like just find those resources, and definitely go to the books. I mean, the books that we have here, it's, if you have more time commitment, if you have, say, like 8 hours, 16 hours to spend, just get the book, go through the exercises. I think Gan makes a great job at, introducing TensorFlow Js. Like these other books are out there, and just try to start with simple stuff. Like don't try to build like a self-driving car. Like at the beginning, start with, hey, like I have Google Analytics data. I want to predict like how many users am I gonna get next month, right, in my website, or like something very simple, and just learn the concepts, learn to do visualizations, learn to do simple predictions. And then, yeah, like I honestly think that it's harder to become a web developer than to learn artificial intelligence with the right tools. So I think you're in the right spot. It's more like anything else, you'll have to spend the hours, right, to read blog posts, go on YouTube and learn some of the concepts. We're definitely trying to do a little bit of that on HAL9, but there's a bunch of other resources out there. So yeah, just commit to it, and I think I think it's definitely possible. You're not far away from that, so you just need to spend the time.
Thank you a lot, Javier.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I enjoyed. I think you are the highlight.
No, not at all. I think we have a bunch of we had a bunch of really, really awesome talks. So
we had excellent talks,
Yep.
talks. But yeah, absolutely excellent talks. I enjoyed your talk. I enjoyed other talks.
I'm sorry, Jaime. Can we get the Javier's Twitter or something like that?
Yeah, for sure. Sorry about that. I should have posted it on on the slides. But yeah, it's I'll just leave it there while we finish this. It's just Javier Luraski. That's my name at Twitter. And yeah, I think I'll make sure I upload it to the slides, and then whenever they get shared, you can just click them. But I'm more or less easy to find. If you search HAL9 Javier or something, hopefully you'll find me. And yeah, definitely, if anyone has additional questions, or if you need resources just to learn, data science, just let me know. Like, I'm happy to help. I think the books are definitely the best resource today. So start with those. But like, if you have any additional questions, just feel free to contact me, and I'll help you out, get in contact with other people, or try to help answer your question.
Maybe you can add those resources that you don't have on your slides on Moodle, the Moodle platform that everyone has access to. So it would be simpler. Just those resources you mentioned,
for sure,
that you don't have in the slides themselves.
Yep, I'll do that.
It would be very helpful. Okay then. So you were the last speaker, and I want to thank you all for attending Extreme JS. I want to wish you health, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and the best.